Yep. They love that.
I think people are going to like today because it's a list.
We'll just simplify
Like
shit.
lists. So let's go.
All right.
Are you ready? Okay. We're back at the Combat Base Garage. We got first the CEO. the Black Belt CEO. The
Here I
femme
am.
fatale. Here she is. We got the OG. The venerable.
He's there.
I'm
Chris
here.
Howder.
We got John behind the lens and behind the buttons. Click, 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 click.
We got Sadie.
We
got the
Sadie,
little pup.
Sadie the
the
dog.
The
mascot.
skittish little rescue dog.
I'm Tobin, the producer. And today, we got a super sick episode. I'm psyched. We're going to talk about the Dirty Dozen.
So dirty.
So dirty.
That sounds dirty.
And I was calling it the American Dirty Dozen. I actually think there might be
There's an Australian in it.
a guy in there that's
Yes.
not American. And
Or
then
Canadian or something.
there's some honorable mentions, maybe 13, 14, 15s that are definitely not American
Yeah.
that we might talk about. So we're going to go over the Dirty Dozen, the first 12 non-Brazilian Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts. And there's a women's list too. We're going over
There's
the
the
men's
women's
list.
Dirty Dozen,
We're going to
yeah.
go over the women's list. And it's going to be epic.
Sick.
Yeah.
Sickness.
Yeah. But before we get going,
We just want to tell you that we've got these really awesome hoodies, unboxing, unbagging, and tees available at combatbase.com, Think Street, Train Sport, Practice
Sick.
Art, CBH on the front, zip so you don't get jacked in the street. You could take it off real quick. Use the discount code PODCAST10 for 10% off.
Dark combat base.
if you want to look jacked, you can view the Athletic Fit tee.
Yeah, the Athletic Fit tee. Tobin's tee right here. Podcast 10% off. Think Street, Train Sport, Practice Art.
All right.
Dark combat base.
Dark. All right. All right. What's up with this list? It's kind of a weird thing, right? For some
Well-
reason, we choose the first 12 and say those guys are better than everybody else.
The Baker's
Of
Dozen.
course, like everything, I have a ton of opinions on it.
Nice.
And my opinions on it have shifted and changed over the years. Sometimes they change from day to day. And I remember when somebody first told me about it, because I didn't even know that what it was or what was on. It was like,
Of course you didn't.
it sort of happened just before like Facebook was on, where websites were still something you went to and people would still do things in underground forums. And of course, the label, the Dirty Dozen, is basically, there was a movie called that where like Lee Marvin and all these action adventure guys, 12 of them do a thing, and which like goes back to A-Team and Special Operations have 12 guys on it. And so there's all that. And then I remember when I first heard about it, I knew I was for sure on it, and people would ask me where I'm at and was it hard to get and all that stuff. And the one thing I definitely know, and sometimes, of course, one hesitates to say this publicly, is I know so much of it was political, of like who was going to be the first non-Brazilian black belts. And then I remember first hearing that, God, what is the word I want to use? Is like, in one sense, why should there be a difference of Brazilian and non-Brazilian? Like, what's the point of that, right? But I guess it's a thing that we do because we humans like to sift and sort and categorize, and there's like a really good part of that. Like, we look at science, it's a really good thing that we sift and sort and analyze and put things in brackets and the categories, just like in evolutionary biology, there's always a debate about things when they're kind of hovering between one group and another, which one does it belong? And then, of course, the layman's mind thinks that that's a fixed thing, just like people think that the law of gravity is this like thing, it's a law. It's like, no, it's a description of phenomenon that we best articulate as a law because it works with the way our brains work with mathematics and language and all that. So the Dirty Dozen, in some ways, is all bullshit.
Yeah, but hold on.
But then in other ways, it's not.
I mean, let's just think about like the first to do something, the first to break a barrier. If those people didn't do it, then all the people after them wouldn't have done it either, right?
That's
Or maybe
true.
there would have been some other first, but you still got to have the first, right? And this art was very protected. This is my understanding. It was very protected, and it was secret at first. It was so secret that you would get beat up if you were, or you were threatened that if you show this to other people that it was going to be bad for you, right? That's my understanding. So the fact that you guys reached the point where you were able to penetrate that barrier and get the coveted black belt is a big deal. And a lot of other instructors weren't doing it.
That's true. And at that time, it was kind of known within the martial arts community, even if the classical art guys wouldn't admit it, that the Brazilian Jiu-jitsu black belt was the last real black belt. Whereas like every other art had been polluted with marketing, kids programs. If you're just there 5 years and sign this paper and $5,000, we will make sure you're a black belt no matter what. And so like it was a different culture then. And I think it still ultimately is. And like that's the one thing why I always say but train sport is because sport really does create a true meritocracy. You can't bullshit your way into being the black belt world champion. You can't. And especially when there's brackets. Now, in professional MMA, boxing, that's a show. And that show picks their athletes who are all really good, not because they worked their way through some bracket and became the champion and therefore get to do UFC. That's not how it works. They're chosen in the same way that actors are chosen for the film. Not because they're the world's best actor. Like one of the funniest films on that is Team America World Police, right? That Matt Damon. He's the best actor in the world. As if like there's like an acting competition and you have to win the acting competition and whoever wins the competition gets the lead role. That's just like not how it works. And so that's one of the things, the purity of why us humans, even if we're unaware, we love the concept of sport and competition because it's true meritocracy.
Nice.
Boy, I can ramble.
Well, I was wondering, was Horian giving black belts?
No.
No?
That's the other thing. From what I understand, and again, this is just my little miniature perspective of a broad thing. And my perspective is looking at it like this, thinking I know what's real. Somebody might be over here looking it over there and see things that I don't see. But Horian was pissed off that the Machados and Hickson gave black belts to anyone outside of the culture. Then you have to say, what is the culture? The culture being the tight-knit Brazilian jiu-jitsu culture where, similar to the mafia, you got to be vetted. And the way the Italian mafia worked is if you're not 100% pure Sicilian Italian, you can't be a made man. Go to like, what's that great movie about the mob that we all love? I've seen 5 times and can't think of the name.
Is it Goodfellas?
Goodfellas.
There's a poster on the ceiling.
There it is. Good. Yeah. Only one of those guys was allowed to become a made man because he was of the pure bloodline. But the hanger-ons would have just as much clout in some ways, but could never be a made man.
I see.
And there was a feeling, I remember, I think it was 98 or 99, I was in Hawaii, and I got to eat at the black belt table, the made guy. I remember the chance was like, dude, you're like a made man. And I was eating with like Helson, Horian, Hegan, Carlos, Henzo showed up, Hickson, and they were all talking, I could tell because it wasn't in English. They were talking about Horian and pissed off. And somehow I started to jump in and say, yeah, one time more. And they all looked over at me, and I quickly realized, oh, I don't have enough rank to talk shit.
Yeah.
And I shut up. And it's like, oh, I get it. Like there are little things I would learn along the way,
Yeah.
how to adapt to this culture. And they've all changed over the years. And Horion has changed. And Horion, when I ran to him into him like a year ago at home, the depot, and every time I've run into him in the last 10 years, he's totally warm, friendly, and nice.
Yeah.
Whereas when I left, I had this feeling that he wanted to kill me.
Yeah.
Right? It was just this.
I thought it was just like he was like, I know you'll make the right choice.
And I didn't.
Right.
In his
Like
opinion,
he told you have to choose, and I know you'll make the right choice. That doesn't sound like he wants to kill you. It sounds like he was hoping that you would come with him.
He was hoping that
you
I
didn't.
would stay. Yes. When like there were rumors, and it's probably true, that Horion had bugged the men's locker room at the new academy. And I never talked about anything, but I remember one time after class, and it was Hickson's Wednesday class. And Hickson didn't teach there very long either. And Hegan Machado had a private room door that said Hegan Gracie. Like that they were giving him a chance to come back in the fold. And I'm sure he had heard, probably through Hoyce, that I was training in Hegan's garage, simultaneously being at the new Gracie Academy. So after a class, like I would try to leave pretty quickly. He called me into the office. He was very warm and gracious and basically explained how Hegan's jiu-jitsu is not as good as the real. It was almost like that Hegan hadn't learned the secret stuff yet. And if you ever want to get the secret real stuff, you have to train here and stop training with Hegan. And I know you will make the right choice.
And here's the thing, the kicker, that had you stayed with Horion, you wouldn't be the Dirty Dozen.
I would not have been the Dirty Dozen. There's no way.
Because he wasn't giving out black belts.
That's right.
And whoever was the first, but the Machados had several
Yes.
American black belts in the Dirty Dozen.
Yes.
Because you have the whole list, right?
I got the list.
And
We're going to
you
talk
know
about that.
which ones are Machado.
And there's arguments about that list even being accurate.
It might not even be accurate, and there's several different ones because you have a list, and I've seen different versions of that list.
So before we get to the list, though, I just want to say one more thing. I think it's interesting because all these, as I'm learning from being around GU over the last couple of years, a lot of this stuff is still embedded in the culture. Remember the black belt thing we went to? There was the dinner afterwards where they're inviting the black belts to the black belt dinner. Do you remember that?
Yes.
I do.
There's the private rooms still.
Yes.
I hear about getting called into the office.
Yes.
That was even, didn't Dean say that?
Yeah.
Dean got called into the office?
When I very first went to GU, like one of my very first times that I like stepped on the mats there, I was a brown belt. And I think especially in a gi, I look like a jiu-jitsu guy, you know? And one of the old teachers there that's been there for a long time, I walked up to him like I would from the background of my Japanese stuff that I do and all this stuff. And I introduced myself, like, confidently. And he was like, oh, you must be from the family. That's what he said. You must be from the family. And I didn't know what he was saying. So I was just like, sure.
What's the family?
It's the family, right? He thought that I was like maybe from Brazil visiting or something like that because of the way that I carried.
Or directly received your black belt from somebody really important.
Yeah, so because of the way that I carried myself, just the confidence I think that I have and that I was different, obviously. It's weird. We're all in a white uniform, but I stand out like a sore thumb over there for some reason. I could even probably wear one of their gis and I look very different.
Or do you just feel like that?
No, I look like that because I can step up to the class of 70 plus students and they always they recognize that I'm out of place. But anyway, so it's still part of the culture. Yeah. And it's still, the things that you're describing are still built into the culture, all these little things. And so it's kind of.
Yes.
Yeah.
But they do give Americans black belts.
They do.
And I would say, as somebody who thinks about this all the time as an amateur anthropologist, sociologist, weirdo, I think about this stuff probably way too much. Human nature is, by nature, we are hierarchical, by tribal nature. And to go against that nature, which is also natural, to buck the trend, it's like we really are, our psyches and our tribes are these dual drives where the alpha is competing with the beta within yourself. And like, should I step out and be the individual and express myself, or should I go along with the group and follow? And like, there's all those great lines like, the view is, unless you're the lead dog, the view is the same, you know, because only the lead dog sees thing, everybody else just sees the dog butts running. And I think in martial arts tend to, by nature, because of what we're doing, very easily fall into that hierarchical culture. Because we're thinking about fighting, self-defense, preservation, and we have 100,000 years of evolution that favors small tribes working with one leader. It's like why our human brains recognize great athletes and admire them with emotional attachment, but not the people who cured polio or who figured out the mathematics of astronomy, because the guy who can run hurdles and throw a spear and do a shot put rock at an animal is the guy, if you're on his team, you're going to eat. You're going to live when the enemy tribe attacks you. And I think all of us, especially boys, young boys, we spend so much time growing up as these little people who we know could get beat up by all the adults, including adult women. It creates a natural misogyny and a natural feeling of insecurity, because the world can beat you up when you're small. And then when you come into your age, it's like we all know a guy who started off in the kids class and he's 13 and 14 and still you beat with man strength. And there's that like magic window sometime between 14 and 16 where all of a sudden they're holding their own against the men. And that rite of passage and that process is common to the combat sports, but not to the non-functioning combat arts, and definitely not to modern culture. So I think one of the cultural values that we get from combat sports is that natural process of young men, young boys turning into men, right? And for women, because I'm not a woman, I don't experience their experience. So,
but hey, there's a woman here.
Yes.
I don't even know what the question is.
I got like 5 of those kids at judo right now that were like 8 and 9 and 10 years old when I started. And now they're 17, 18, 19, and 20 years old.
How does that feel?
Awful.
Yeah. Because they beat you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I mean, they were little tiny children.
Yeah, that you were playing
I'd
with.
Delicately throw them around. And now I got to work as hard as I possibly can to throw them, and they're throwing me.
Yeah.
I gotta fake Tomo Inage, pull guard, and then roll them up in order to win. That's the only way I can get them now.
I remember overhearing John Machado say to a guy, smiling about it, be nice to the kids class, because one day they're going to be able to kick your ass.
Crazy. All right. Well, let's get into it. Let's get into this list.
Okay.
All right.
Let's get into this list.
So you're right. There are a couple different lists. I found a few good ones. I think the BJJ Heroes one is probably it looks like the most thoroughly
investigated
one and
after
investigated
you did cross comparison with dates, etc. Did you do all that?
A little bit.
Okay, a little
And
bit.
we should definitely add a
Did you write a
disclaimer
paper on
here
it?
that all of this is just opinion. We don't know exactly who is who.
Yeah.
And if I get an order wrong or I leave someone out, there's nothing intentional, malicious, or narcissistic of me in doing so.
Well, he has a list.
But we
has
do want to
yeah,
several
but we don't know if
lists.
that's real.
But we do want to hear your thoughts in the comments.
I'm ready.
Hit the comments. So Okay, well, first of all, I want to say that the guys that were doing promotions, Haueter is coined as having done the first non-Brazilian
That's
promotion.
right. And
And
it's
who is it?
Craig Krukuk.
Craig Kukuk.
Yes.
And he's
So
American?
East Coast guy, New Jersey guy. Apparently, he was training in Brazil. He went down to
Yes,
Gracie Humaita.
He did. And there was one period, I know, I just want to interject this
Yeah,
real
all
quick,
good.
where there was an arranged garage jiu-jitsu match, not MMA fight, between him and Bob Bass, and Bob Bass won. That's something that
Were you there?
I was not there.
You just heard about it.
Just heard about
Hearsay.
it. It's hearsay.
Hearsay.
So there's not much information about Kukuk out there. Apparently,
him?
apparently he
met
had
him once, but-
some amazing like instructionals at one point where he
He did.
really covered a lot of good stuff.
There were VHS tapes that he put out that were in magazines, and I remember he was told to discontinue those and stop.
That's what I imagine.
By the higher ups.
And I imagine there's some issue if Haueter was the one to give him his black belt. And this is 91, they're saying.
Yeah.
91, 92. So Kukuk,
I don't know
don't
the
know how he-
story, but I bet you that story itself, if well written, could be a great movie.
we got to track down Craig and
That
get him on
would
the
Got to be a
pod.
book first,
a
Craig.
good movie. Yeah.
Yeah, got to track down Craig and put him on the pod.
Yeah.
That'd be
Craig,
insane.
hit us up.
Not much information about Craig, but New Jersey guy got his black belt in Brazil from Haueter in
Yep.
91.
Okay.
That was pretty undisputed from across the board. All the
Yep.
lists seem to have Craig as the first one.
Craig.
What's up, Craig?
Craig, sup?
All right. Now there starts to be some confusion as to who is number 2 and who is number 3. But it seems like Dave Kama is number 2.
That's from Hickson.
Number 2 or number 3 from
Hickson,
Hickson?
I don't really know. I know that I want to say it was during the same year I got my black belt, maybe.
What
a
year
little
do they say?
before or whatever.
95, they're saying.
No,
You got yours in
maybe it was
96.
maybe
so
it
it's
was a
close
year
enough.
before.
But there's an asterisk saying they're not sure about 2, 3, and 4, like whether the timing. The timing, basically from all of them, they're like, we're not totally sure.
Because Bob Bass probably got his in 95, right?
Bob Bascott is definitely a solid
Year before
16
Chris.
months before mine.
So it had to have been 95.
So Kama's a Hawaii guy, though, right? Originally,
He trained with Hickson as far as I remember. Like,
So
I
he's Torrance guy?
remember being colored belts in rooms where he was there. Yep.
so Dave Kama, number 2-ish. John Lewis.
John
number
Lewis,
3.
yeah.
Who's that?
He's a guy, he fought MMA briefly.
Judo black belt under Gene LaBelle.
Okay.
You know him? John Lewis?
I've met him. I know all these people. I just,
Who is he a black belt under?
Andre
Andre Pedneris.
Pedneris.
Now, I had a match with Andre Pedneris in which I won. The crowd was yelling USA, USA, but they raised his hand.
It happens.
John Lewis is a Brazilian guy?
John
No.
Lewis is American.
Or American?
Andre
Oh, yeah.
Pedneris
Out
is-
of
Yeah, yeah,
Pedneris
yeah.
is Brazilian.
That's right. He wouldn't be on the
They
list.
have to be. They have to be Brazilian.
But yeah, I think he did some MMA too.
Yep.
And he did some cage fighting with under Chuck Liddell, Randy Couture, Egan Inouye, Ensign,
Inouye.
Egan Inouye, Ensign Inouye, Rico Rodriguez, BJ Penn, Mark Liamau,
Yeah, Lamau.
Drysdale. So he's basically like a gnarly MMA dude.
Yeah.
And
He's an old school lightweight.
Nova Uniao, black belt.
Yep.
95, they're saying. So these are 95
Novo
guys.
Nile, yep.
Dave Kama, John Lewis.
Which
All right.
had a big Hawaii presence,
Number 4.
rivaling Helson. Yep.
Number 4, which is also, they're not sure, somewhere in 95, Ken Gabrielson.
Oh, Ken Gabrielson, yeah.
He was a Helson black belt.
Yeah, and I want to say he was a phenomenal wrestler too. I think.
Okay. There's a bunch of like, I guess somebody found some pictures of him wearing a black belt in 93.
So then he would
But-
be number 2.
But it also
But
might
I
have
think-
been him wearing a judo black belt or
Something like that.
Because back in those days, I remember guys from other arts coming in and wearing their rank from the other art. Like I remember one of the Australian guys would regularly wear his other art's black belt while he was on the mat. And I remember it offending some of the guys that did Brazilian Jiu-jitsu, but it didn't seem to offend the instructors enough to make him take it off. But I know he wouldn't have been welcomed into Horion's school doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember training judo at Tenri Judo in LA. I was telling you about that place under Tokuzo Takahashi. And we got to the grappling part. And he was watching me, obviously, because I was a new guy and have a brown belt in judo.
Yeah.
And he was watching me roll around or watching me train and was kind of like thinking that my judo was a little weak, you know?
Yes.
And then
But your newaza was really
we
good.
started rolling. So he pulled me aside at the end. He's like, is that a judo brown belt or a jiu-jitsu brown belt? That's what he said. And I was like, judo. And he was like, okay.
Yeah.
So he was like,
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, interesting.
Now, I'll just add that I'm sure I mentioned this before in the podcast, before UFC, or maybe it was after UFC 1, and I was at a judo club regularly, that these judo black belts, these old school black belts, would be so frustrated and pissed because I would destroy them in newaza on the mat. Like, would be like viscerally mad and could not figure it out. And that's the thing that I learned back then. If they don't ask, you don't offer.
Yeah.
You don't like arm lock them and say, here's how I'm arm locking. And the like Jeet Kune Do guys, karate guys, they would always ask, like, whoa, how'd you do that? Judo guys would never ask.
Well, also think
They'd never ask you how you did it back in the old days.
Yeah.
So you just keep doing
that.
The same thing over and over to them.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just keep on rolling. All right. So this guy, Ken Gabrielson. Yeah, it sounds like there was some controversy over the date, but 95 is where they're putting him. Number 4. Okay. Number 7, 5, 6, and 7, they've lumped together because they can't tell what the dating is. But we got James Boran.
James Boran, yep.
You know this guy?
Yep, I know him well. Really
Who is he?
good heavyweight. Solid from Joe Moreira.
Joe Moreira.
Yep.
So Joe Moreira has a few promotions to black belt in these days. He was a linebacker. James Boran was a football linebacker at Columbia University.
I believe it. I remember
signed,
he and I had an open class match, and God, it was rough. He destroyed me.
He signed with the New York Jets in 1979.
Oh,
Wow.
okay. No
And
wonder
he was a Taekwondo black
so
belt.
easy.
He was a Taekwondo black belt, and he trained at Gracie Academy before going to Moreira's.
Yes.
Yeah.
He was solid, very good instructor too.
Uh-huh.
I highly recommend, if you get a chance, train with James Boran.
Nice. Mark Baccarizo. Not much is known about this guy, but apparently he's a judo and hapkido guy that Joe Moreira gave a black belt in 1996.
Where's Bob Bass? He's 1995.
We're still going. We're still
But
on the
if
list.
that guy's 96, why are they?
Because we're just reading what the
We're
internet
just reading the
Okay,
internet.
internet lies. Just saying.
So that's Mark Baccarizo. And then we got Rick Lucero.
I remember Rick. Now, from my memory, he got his black belt after me.
Ah.
I know Rick really well.
And where is he from?
He's a short, lightweight,
California.
super strong.
But who's
Joe Moreira.
Joe Moreira.
Very tough.
Wrestling guy.
Great guy. Also fought MMA.
Maybe he's listening and he can clarify this for us.
So they're saying this guy got his black belt in January of 96. Rick Lucero. Let's move on to the next guy. They think they got Bob Bass at a solid number 8 here.
So that
1996, they're saying mid to early 96, promoted by Higan Machado, one of the best grapplers of his generation. He did the unthinkable at the 1995 Pan American Championship, the first official Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Pan Am tournament, defeating the Jiu-Jitsu prodigy Marcio Feitosa.
Yep.
Which
I
we
remember
talked about.
when he at brown belt. When
We
he
talked
beat
about that.
Mauricio Feitosa. Yeah.
We talked about that with John Jacques, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if he was a brown belt in 95, maybe he did get his black belt in 96.
Don't know. It was after that match. I think that was the match that they gave him a black belt after that.
So that's Bob Bass.
Yep.
And Bob just got his corral belt.
Yep.
Yes. So I think he got his black belt in 95 because wouldn't be even close to being due for corral belt if he was in 96 because Chris isn't due.
I
for
almost
several
think after
years.
that brown belt match is when he got his black belt.
Sounds like it. All right. Now we got another cluster. They don't know where these guys line up. They're saying number 9, 10, and 11. We got Dave Meyer.
Is
He got his
before you?
black belt the same day I got mine, and I don't know who was given it before. All I know is Dave Meyer, me, Rick Williams,
Yep.
Fernando, Hanato Magna, we all got our black belts that same day.
And Fernando and Hanato are Brazilian.
Brazilian.
They're
So
Brazilian.
they're not on the list.
Yeah.
But Chris Howder and
But we
And
got
Rick
our black
and-
belts that same day, and I remember I was going to not go to class that night. And somebody said, no, you have to go. And I'm like, really? I'm like, I'm a little injured. I was going to take you down. No, you have to go. And I don't even remember who it was. But somebody told me that I
Probably
absolutely have to go. Might have been Chance. And Rick Mentor, I want to say that he didn't show up. And
Rick
should
Williams?
have.
Rick Williams?
Rick Mentor.
Oh,
Another
Rick Mentor.
Rick.
There's
A
another
different guy.
Rick's not even on the list.
I
Right?
know.
yeah, see, Chris could have missed the list
Yes.
by a hair.
And he should have been there.
Yeah.
Yes. Just like Mark Eckert, who was one of Hickson's guy, who was always a belt ahead of me, who I would go down sometimes to his Laguna class and train, which Dave Kama would be at as well. And somehow he, for political reasons, did not get it. He should have been Hickson's first black belt. But Chris Saunders was, and who is also a very
Chris
cool
Saunders
guy.
isn't on the list.
He should be.
He's there's some controversy over whether Saunders belongs in the number 12 slot or not.
What?
But we'll cover that.
But we put Dave Kama
Wait,
way
hold on.
ahead. Anyways,
But
But
we got-
I think
so-
the whole thing doesn't matter.
So
anyways.
they're putting Chris Howder,
Somehow they put
Rick
me in.
Williams, Dave Meyer on 9, 10, and 11, somewhere in there. But you guys are all at the same.
Yeah.
they're all the same day.
So you guys.
But I almost want to say that
Triplets.
I remember running into Chris Saunders and we were talking about Mark Eckert, how Mark should have been it. And it was before Chris got his black belt, and I had already gotten mine. But that's just a memory I have that we were talking about that at Hickson's first tournament, where I had a fight with Kleber. 0-0, they raised Kleber's hand. I remember that. But anyways, keep going.
I think I saw that match the
It's a
other day.
boring
I saw
fight
you
to
versus
watch.
Kleber.
Yeah,
You play guard the whole
There's
time.
a VHS film.
I saw it the other day.
Yeah.
You play guard the whole time, right?
I tried, but like I'm trying to do stand up, realizing I'm running out of time.
Yeah.
Trying a guard thing, abandoning guard, trying to stand up
Yeah,
again. Yeah. He's
All
a
right.
really smart, skilled,
Competitor.
competition
Yeah.
style jiu-jitsu guy. Really good at it.
Hanato Magno just got his coral belt too the same day that Bob Bass did.
Okay.
Early.
Early.
If you would have gone to camp, you might have gotten yours too.
Wait,
Possible, but
so Rick
I wanted
Williams,
early.
No.
Rick Williams, what's up with that guy? He seems freaking gnarly.
Rick Williams is really tough. I know that he was one of Hoyce's top guys. The rumor has it he was rolling with Hoyce, and he kept leg barring Hoyce, and Hoyce kicked him out. And then he came to the Machados as a purple belt.
Oh wow, he looks so tough.
He's tough.
He's jacked, right?
Yes.
And Dave Meyer
Yoked. Swole.
was a Japanese
Buff.
jiu-jitsu black belt
Yes.
when he started Brazilian
Wally
jiu-jitsu.
J.
Oh,
The
interesting.
Japanese style. Dave is probably, I would say, has among the best ethics of all the
He's a
old
vegan.
school jiu-jitsu guys I know. He is a vegan. But I mean, above and beyond that,
He loves animals.
He has really good ethics.
And he was a competitor too. He got a
Yeah.
bunch
He
of
still
titles.
competes. He
Yes.
is an avid and
Yeah.
continuous competitor.
Yes.
He was
Nice.
we just saw him at Masters.
Masters,
We
yep.
just saw him there.
Oh wow.
Yeah, he's competing. He's
And he's won his age bracket all
and
kinds
he's your
of years
age,
in a row.
the same
he's
or older?
2 years
than you?
older.
Where
2
does he
years
live?
older.
2 or 3.
So that means
Where
he's
does he live?
in his 60s.
Where's
He's
he live?
NorCal, right? Where
He
does live?
lives NorCal, and for last bunches of years, trains with Caesar Gracie, those guys up there.
Yeah. Nick and Nate.
I got Caesar's purple belt was removed when they gave him his brown belt, and then I was promoted to
Purple belt.
purple belt, and I had Caesar's purple belt
Wow.
as a
Like
hand.
Caesar's, like Caesar's Palace, but Caesar's
Nice.
purple belt.
And he was great. We were the same weight class. We were neck and neck. We would have battles in Hegan's garage. I loved those battles.
Nice. Dave
I
Meyer.
love neck and neck battles.
Yeah.
And Dave's like out of everyone on this list, he's one who will, when he's in town, come train with us here.
Yeah.
Let's get
Yeah,
Dave
he'll
on the
come
pod.
train here.
Yeah, let's get Dave on the pod.
Rick's been here,
Everybody.
not in a gi, but he's shown up. One time he showed up to give me a Dirty Dozen shirt.
Oh, cool.
He came, that one that has the skull in it or whatever, that I got from Rick.
How about this
Nice.
guy, Chris Howder? Who's this guy?
Chris Howder.
Chris Chowder.
Chris Chowder.
I don't know how that clown's on the list. I always say, and I don't mean this with faux humility or anything, but it's right place, right time.
And what I remember you saying was that somebody was training with you and having a really hard time passing your guard. Isn't that when you got your
Jean-Jacques.
black belt? Yeah, Jean-Jacques.
Jean-Jacques was struggling to pass. Like back in the old days, you'd say, okay, Chris, I get in the middle. They'd put 2 or 3 guys to Iron Man, and if you could pass the guard, you would take that
Yeah.
spot.
Done that.
King of the Hill or whatever.
Yeah, and I was holding that for a really long time. Jean-Jacques came in and couldn't pass my guard, and everybody was watching. And then at one point, it's like, man, this guy's guard, and that was when I could invert and do all that cool stuff. That was new school then, because back in old school, nobody inverted. It was us newer school guys that would invert.
And you were about 31, I want to say,
Yep.
when you got your black belt.
All right. Well, let's run on to the number 12. So they have Rick Minter in there,
Okay.
crossed out.
Ooh.
And then John Will is who
Ooh.
they put in place of Rick Minter.
See, with John Will, Australian, experienced martial art. I want to say not Taekwondo, but some other system. He was like pretty high up in the Australian martial arts scene. I love John Will. He's an awesome dude. When a couple times I go to Australia almost every year and like went to his house and everything. He's like super welcoming, warm, cool. I helped his son. Remember, his son came, got his tooth chipped, unfortunately, before the competition. Which, if you have a medical or dental emergency in America and you're Australian or English, you're shocked at how our system doesn't accommodate you very well. But that's a whole other issue. We could talk about compare and contrast developed countries' healthcare systems.
But what do you know about that, Chris? You only know jiu-jitsu because you're a black belt in jiu-jitsu, not a black belt in world politics.
That's right.
Actually, he is, guys.
John Will did Silat, Taekwondo and Silat.
Okay.
I don't know what Silat is. I'd have to look it up.
Silat is a Southeast Asian art,
Okay.
very similar to Aikido. It's almost like if you blended Aikido and Kali,
Okay.
the offspring would be Silat.
Okay, so
So did John Will get his black belt from Hegan?
yeah,
Yeah.
they're saying
And
in-
his corral belt.
They're brothers. If you guys haven't seen Hegan
Hegan's
sing
videos.
his song to John Will when it was John Will's birthday,
It's really
you
cool.
really have to watch it. my
Yes.
brother.
It's not even that long.
Australia, Brazil, Australia, Brazil.
Okay, hold
might
on.
want to put it in the little corner down there. Yeah.
So in
Wait,
2000,
another day, another haspasm.
another day,
Another day,
spasm.
another haspasm. Look it up.
in 2010, BJJ Heroes interviewed John Will, then setting the date of his promotion somewhere in 98. For that reason, and since both Rick Minter and Chris Sanders had earned their black belts in the second semester of 97, we disregarded Will from the race for Dirty Dozen. Since launching this piece, however, Higan Machado had stepped forward and mentioned that the 1998 date had been incorrect, as in fact, John Will had earned his rank a couple months before Minter, around August 97, making him number 12.
Wow.
So,
Australia, Brazil.
So you know who
Australia,
would
Brazil.
know this for sure, objectively and honestly? Dave Myers. He's
Yeah,
the
let's get
guy
Dave on here.
who would know.
Come
because
on down, Dave.
him and Will were pretty tight. As a matter of fact, one of them introduced the other one to jiu-jitsu.
So Will is the non-American on the Dirty Dozen
Yes.
list.
Now there's another Australian.
Okay.
See, here's what, like, I have this brain that is really bad at remembering names. Like if I'm
Unless
at
it's a senator. Sorry.
wedding and like I could have a cousin or somebody who I've known for 20 years come up, and because it's right there, I can't remember the name.
Yeah.
I can remember us playing, what shirt they were wearing 10 years ago, what they said, what their opinion was, but their name, I'm just
How
not.
come you know so many senators' names then?
I know the faces.
I pay attention. I know their names more. But if I like was in a room at a party, I'd be like, oh my God, what's that guy's name again? Like when we were in
DC.
Washington, I saw it. I could not think of the guy's name. I just, my brain does this aphasia thing where
You don't connect names and faces, but you know names.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we don't have any faces here, so.
the way my brain stores names is in a way where when I have to do quick access, I can't.
So there's another Australian guy though that you.
There's another.
Was it Roy
Australian, and
Harris?
I can't think of
Roy
his
Harris?
name right
Roy
now.
Harris is not
Roy Harris?
Australian.
Not Roy Harris.
Roy Harris is
Roy Harris is American.
mentioned in here.
He's
And-
honorable mention.
Honorable mention for the Dirty Dozen.
Okay.
I used to say that really it should be the first 24, but because it sounds cooler to say the Dirty Dozen, they do it by that. But
Well,
it
you
should
can do
be the
both.
first.
Somebody can
What
do the
about
first 24.
The old guy you were telling us about.
There's
that
an
one
old
time.
guy.
There's
too.
an old
Yeah.
guy who everybody just refers to as the old guy.
Yes.
That got his black belt in there, but he doesn't count because he was old.
And I was there helping him on his test, and he was like, I don't know, 77 years old, like as old as Biden or Trump, and didn't get like the credit because it's not.
Did he get it? He got his black belt when you got it?
No,
Or before you?
Because back then, the black belt was only given to the athletic division guys, but there were some guys that because of their graciousness and connections to the family would get these black belts, but
Like honorary black belts?
yeah, but they were real black belts, but everybody knew within the group that that's an honorary black belt. But from outside, it was like, I want to say Henzo promoted Jair Bolsonaro, gave him an honorary black belt 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And
Even though he
there's-
never trained?
Henner gave a black belt to the people on Shark Tank.
There you go.
And they never trained?
See?
At the end of the Shark Tank pitch, he gave a
Promoted
black
him.
belt to Mark Cuban, I think.
Did he train? Was he a brown belt?
No, he just gave him a black belt for endorsing his product.
Oh.
Now,
Well,
I
that's
remember
cool.
in the first 2 years that I was a black belt, which was taking place during what I call the second wave of popularity explosion. It was during the period in time in which other martial arts were still very curious about it. So if I might show up to a seminar in Minneapolis or Wichita or any town, middle USA, there'd be like 5 guys from the Taekwondo school, couple guys from the Judo school, like 2, 10 guys from a JKD school, because there weren't Jiu-jitsu schools yet. And it was the people that were interested in this were people from other arts. It wasn't people who came off the street and said, oh, I want to learn the Jiu-jitsu.
Because there wasn't a thing.
There wasn't
People
a
didn't even
thing
know
yet.
about
Yeah.
it. So it was like other martial artists had come across it somehow.
Yes.
And then kind of trickled in.
Yes.
Because it wasn't mainstream.
And it was
underground.
before Red Swaths and Stripes, even, or that was when that kind of started. And during that period of time, one of the debates that I would frequently have, usually with wrestlers who knew a bunch of submission grappling and sometimes others, is why are there even belts in this thing when we have a meritocracy that can like clearly delineate who's good from who's not? And that is a great argument. And one of the arguments for the sport part is the belts are good because it enables you to properly place guys in brackets. You don't want to give the inexperienced guy, the white belt, to the totally good guy, black belt, in a match because it wouldn't be fair. So that's why the no-gi was like beginner, intermediate, advanced. And then they'd say 3 isn't enough. We need 4 divisions. And then people would say, well, there's like, so for jiu-jitsu, like, and I still think white belts shouldn't compete. That's not, that also means that you white belts who are competing out there should probably be blue belts. And that was just like the blue belt should signify that you're ready to compete, in my opinion. That you have a general overview of the entire game. You know how each chess piece moves. If our analogy is chess, you know how to play chess. It doesn't mean you're good or not, but you don't have to go, wait, is it this one that jumps over those pieces? And if I get this one at the end of the board, is it like, you know all that stuff. You're a blue belt.
I'm a blue belt at chess.
So, in my opinion, competition should be blue belt, purple belt, brown belt, black. 4. It shouldn't be 5 divisions.
But if you are a white belt and you are competing, that's okay.
But
Just
that's
his
okay
opinion.
too.
He has
Because
opinions.
the promoters need to make a bunch of money too. And
if you're a promoter, that's okay too.
that's okay too.
Because we wish we had the money that you're making.
Yes, I wish I would have started a competition scene. I remember
100,000
people
years ago.
talking
Still can,
about
Chris.
it
Hamid really wants to.
back then. And one of the reasons why I didn't
Hamid wants to.
is because I already knew IBJJF what was going to come and take this thing over. I just couldn't believe how long it took them to. But anyways, okay.
Organization is
You guys got to
difficult.
realize you're sitting in the presence of the 20th anniversary Copa Pacifica
White belt champion.
white belt champion.
Oh,
You
snaps.
do realize that, right?
At the Copa Pacifica.
I think we're talking.
That's
4 subs,
What?
0 points scored
4
against him.
subs, and you're telling me you weren't a blue belt?
I know, right? 4
clever
different subs.
tournament.
Sandbag much?
That's clever. I love clever.
Like
I've done Clever's tournament before.
Yeah,
A bunch
I
of
never
Clever's
competed
tournament.
as a
Yep.
white belt because my coach didn't think white belts should compete.
Sorry, I was
What an
listening to you
asshole.
while you were talking right there. I was just trying to get this information that I'm looking for about these guys.
That's okay.
I found this. I had a cool note. Oh, here we go. I found it. Sick. Yeah, a bunch of coaches came up to me after that, and they're like,
Sandbag much?
yeah, they're like, so how long have you been training for?
How long had you been training?
A number of months.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
I was a good
You were a
ass phenom.
phenom.
White belt.
You were a good white belt. You
I
learned
worked
fast.
super.
You worked.
No, I worked super hard.
You were a
trained a lot.
phenom.
I was an.
That's what we used to call phenoms.
When I
was a
started
phenom.
jiu-jitsu, I started in between 2 major projects that I had, and I had a lot of extra time. I didn't have kids. I was able to train a lot.
And you got OCD.
I would
about
train like 3 times a day.
it.
Yeah.
You got OCD
Okay.
about it.
I would
That-
go to 3 sessions a day.
That helps.
Yeah.
That really does
But-
help. If you're young, uninjured, no children,
Unencumbered.
don't have to work.
Yeah.
I mean,
I had a good little
really,
period.
that is in the
A
best
good chunk of my
circumstances.
white belt
Mat
period
rats.
was in
we would call
between
them mat rats.
was in between 2 major projects that I had.
Yeah.
And I had tons of free time, and
I remember.
probably could have
yeah.
been spending it more productive.
We all know mat
Trained
rats.
hard.
Good.
Yeah.
The mat rat is the guy who just, no matter what, when you show up, is always there.
Yeah.
You usually leaves after you. You're like, does this guy live at the school? Like,
Yeah.
basically, yes.
So anyway, so I found an honorable mentions list.
Okay, let's
There's
hear
this
some.
guy,
Nice.
Doc Bacarizo.
I've heard of the name, but I can't place
No
it.
So
idea.
Joe
What's up,
Moriera
Doc?
guy.
The Joe Moreira guy. Yeah.
Sean Alvarez from Nelson Monteros
Okay.
in 99.
Chris knew Nelson Montero.
Yes.
Alan Moeller.
Nelson was my main purple belt coach. And I also say, I'll just add in there, purple belt, I believe, is the belt where you cut your teeth, where you really come of age, where jiu-jitsu becomes a part of you. A blue belt could be wearing regular civilian clothes and you have no idea he's a grappler. A purple belt looks like a grappler.
Yeah.
There's a certain look that the purple belt gets, not just the ears, not just the stance, not just
The neck, the shoulders.
neck, everything you can spot the purple belt.
hands.
Even the females, like you can, out of competition, when you see everybody in civilian clothes, you know who's a jiu-jitsu person and who isn't.
Right.
Then if you can spot them in civilian clothes, they're at least a purple
Even
belt.
the females.
Yeah, even the females. They seem to not get as fucked up ears, and not as like that jock walk. I don't notice it as much with the females. Do you? I mean, I see some stacked and jacked and swole females, but
Okay.
All right.
Move on.
okay.
Alan Moeller from Machado, 99.
God, why am I not picturing Alan?
Sorry, Alan.
Anyway, we mentioned him. Chris Posnick.
Posey?
Posey.
Posey definitely got his belt after me. Posey was a former wrestler, heavyweight, stubborn as fucking stubborn could be.
Saw him at Trader Joe's the other day.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah. What up, dog?
tough guy. Spent the last couple years doing private security contracting work in Africa.
Wow.
Yeah.
Matt Serra from Henzo in 1999.
Sarah, yep, is another guy who's really talented, really tough, really good.
And
yep.
I'm guessing Nick Serra's his brother from Henzo in 99. John De La O? Question
La
mark?
O.
Peter DeBain
Peter DeBean.
from Carlinhos.
Peter DeBean is like fairly responsible for the spreading of jiu-jitsu in Asia and Australia. He spent a lot of time in that area. I only know because several places in Asia and or Australia that I've been hosted, his name comes up, or they say that's who they started with, or that's who they were with. And yeah, that's all I know.
Nelson Solari got a black belt from Carlson.
I do know that
From
name,
Carlson Gracie,
but I cannot
the old
picture
man.
him.
Okay. Yuki Nakai. Carlinhos gave Yuki Nakai a black belt
Nakai.
in 1999.
Yeah.
That's pretty
And
cool.
if any of those names out there, anyone, whether we know you or not, if you want to be on the podcast, you are more than welcome. Fly to LA, schedule it with the producer, Tobin, and you will be on the podcast.
Yes. Anybody that was
If
mentioned
Tobin
today.
approves you. He is the producer.
Because we have a hierarchy.
He's
Do
in
we?
charge. Tobin's in charge.
Of something, hopefully. All right. That's it for the dudes. So let's move on to the chicks real quick.
And Papa John is a corral belt.
Yes.
There's other people who are corral
Yes.
belts
Who's
out
Papa
there
John?
that
Well,
aren't
John
on
Gorman
the list.
was Carlinos' right-hand man. He is absolutely responsible for, and yes, this is in air quotes, cleaning up IBJJF to be presentable to the Olympic Committee. And there are stories about that of which I don't know the full stories. I've heard from Papa John and others. But yes, he's basically responsible for the bullpen, the organization of the mats, the way the competitions should be run. He made an attempt to start, after him and Carlinos had a falling out, he made an attempt to begin an American version of it and would be like, I'm going to fucking organize the whole fucking thing and we should do our own thing. And he wanted me to like head it up.
So
And-
just like they gave out old man black belts, but they didn't make the list, they also give out old man corral belts, but they aren't required to do the time that Papa John created before the IBJJF,
Which
or
then
helped create
and really what
the
this
time and rank.
yes, what this conversation ultimately philosophically leads to is who and why does somebody have the authority to promote somebody else? And it also begs a question is why is this Gracie with Jiu-Jitsu? Why isn't it Maeda Jiu-Jitsu? I used to think that in a perfect world, in an idealistic, equitable world, every black belt would have their own name. You wouldn't carry the name of who gave you a belt. And then one could argue no, because you need to have a team and organize. So again, we as humans, we tend to fall in line, and that line is the hierarchy. And so who has the authority? And somehow people think that authority is of cosmic and or God's origin as well, but really it's all human opinions of we're going to say that you now have enough authority to make other people black belts.
Once you get your second stripe on your black belt, which is 6 years as
Right.
a black belt, which I don't even know if that rule existed when Chris when Chris gave out his first black belt.
That rule did not exist
That rule
yet.
did not exist because I think Matt got his black belt in 2000 and
Yep.
Chris got his black belt in 1996. And
Yep.
Matt Thornton is Chris's first black belt. So
Yep.
they're only like 4 years apart.
Yep. And technically, right. But then the point is, who gets to make up the rules? God? Carlinos?
Somebody
Paleo?
did.
Who gets to make up these rules? And who gets to make up their rules? And that's where in human culture, they say God, the divine right. So there are theories that there is a something divine, God, that gives somebody the authority to knight people, right? So when you go back into all human cultures, basically everyone was a monarchy. And one of the coolest philosophies in the 1920s and 30s, unfortunately it died, 3 Arrows, which was anti-monarchy, anti-fascism, anti-other things, but of course they got their asses kicked. But anyways, that's a whole... Look up 3 Arrows on the internet and you'll find an interesting philosophy. Okay. I'm not saying I agree with them entirely. Just like I encourage you to read Karl Marx, I encourage you to read Mein Kampf. Yeah. It's like it's important to understand how and why us humans do things the way we do it, and how much of it is below our consciousness.
Yeah, it's much better to offer a consideration than an answer, I feel like.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, let's get back on track here.
Boy,
it's the year 2002, and Leca Vieira and Higan Machado tie a black belt around the waist of Cindy Omatsu.
That's correct.
The very first woman outside of Brazil to receive a black belt.
And I started training with her in 2003. Mm-hmm. That's when I started training.
The year after she got her black belt. So you know her well and you trained with her a bunch, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Till Chris and Cindy both promoted me together to my brown belt.
Uh-huh. Yep.
And the only reason why I really, I stopped training with her because once I had kids, it was hard. I don't know. It was also like I was really focused on my competition career. And I feel like training in the women's group with Cindy, it was really beneficial when I was a lower belt. And then I needed to seek like I was a brown belt now. You know what I mean? Like I was competing against the best in the world. It was brown and black together.
You needed to roll with me.
I needed to roll with people who were also that skill level. Yep. So I saw her less often, though I still do see her. We taught together recently, like last year, we taught a vertically challenged seminar with 5 instructors.
So
Little People's Camp.
What's her
Little People's?
Her jiu-jitsu like? I've met her before, and she presents as such a gentle and like she's almost sweet. The word meek.
Yeah, so I would say that's her personality for sure, and And on the mat, I would say she has really, really good defense. When rolling, and that's like, to me, like the most important thing as a small person. You need to have really, really good defense. Otherwise you're just going to be getting tuned up all the time. So like as a smaller person, we need to know how to take care of ourselves and protect ourselves, and that is like one of the biggest benefits I got from training with Cindy, because Chris just didn't get it. You know what I mean? Like a lot of guys, you just push them off of you. You can't just push them off of you. It doesn't work. So so I really benefited a lot from just like the way that she frames. In all the time that I ever rolled with her, I never got close to submitting her.
Wow.
You know? So, and I mean, and I could get positional dominance, but I could never get close to submitting her because she was so good defensively. But I also would consider her an encyclopedia of techniques. So she's a technique collector and is very precise about her techniques and how she delivers it. So when Chris would teach something and he would show something 10 different ways and I just couldn't follow it, with Cindy, it was much more of a connection that she was able to break it down in a way that I could understand at that time. He doesn't teach like that anymore. But when, you know, at this time when I was starting out, Chris was, you know, he's showing this, he's showing that, and everybody's eating it up and loving it. But as a new person, it was hard for me to pull out what I was trying to do. And so doing private one-on-ones with Cindy where she could really break down information for me, it was extremely beneficial. And doing small group lessons with other ladies and being like her assistant. I would teach for her when she was out of town. And it was really wonderful to have her as a mentor and role model.
That's awesome.
And I will say, when I was a brown belt, Cindy and I started the first American women's class. Not self-defense, you get a pink belt, but a real jiu-jitsu class
for women.
For women.
Yeah.
And I think at one point we built it up to where we had around 8 regulars.
Nice.
Lori was one of the regulars. Trying to remember. Cindy and Lori are the two that I remember that like remained involved. Lori kind of stopped training for a while when she moved to Colorado and was doing her master's program.
But Lori is a black belt under Chris as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nice.
And she trained with Cindy a lot, and I trained with Lori a lot when she would come into town.
That's awesome. She seems really cool. I'd love to like get to talk to her a little more.
And
I've asked her.
Come on, Cindy.
Come on down.
Shortly after I got my black belt, Lekka came in, and I turned that women's class over to Lekka.
Oh, cool. I think Lekka was married to Gilo Bell for a period of time. Yeah.
And
she was married to
Aloysius Silva. Yeah. That was like...
Sorry, Lekka.
I met her in
when she was married to Gilo Bell.
And
no, first she was married to Aloysius. And they showed up here.
They did. I'm not going to go into that story at all, but I take Lekka's side, not Aloysius.
Yeah. Gilo Bell's the man, too. Has Gilo Bell ever been over here?
Apollo has never been here. He's good.
Oh, yeah.
We used to train with them at the Machado Academy.
Yeah, I trained with them a little bit. Yep. All right. Number 2, the second woman, Japanese woman, promoted by Yuki Nakai. Her name was Aika Sato. Apparently she's a really prolific competitor. And promoted by Yuki in 2003. Number 3, DC Maxwell. Do you guys know this lady?
Steve Maxwell's wife?
I think so.
Yep.
Steve Maxwell's wife and Steve...
Ex-wife.
Or ex-wife. Okay. Yep. Sorry.
I think
guys.
ex-wife, yeah.
Yep. She was promoted by Salo. Salo promoted her.
Oh.
Yeah. 2003. And she had some good competition results, too. All right. Number 4, Kathy Brothers.
Oh, Kathy, yes. I remember Kathy very well. But Kathy, like, I always try to get Kathy to want to come to my women's class, but Kathy was one of those people, understandably, is like, no, I need to train with the men. These women are too, like, ow, no, you know, she was tough. Was a fierce battler.
Yeah.
So she got her belt from
from
Machado.
Machados.
Yeah.
Carlos Machado.
Yep.
And she did some MMA fighting, early MMA. She did some pancration.
She did.
She was like
And had a
she wanted to
really
brawl.
bad knee injury. It's tragic because she could have easily been one of the first female jiu-jitsu champions and MMA stars, but she had a really bad knee injury.
So
If I
2000,
remember right.
2005, Lecca promoted Chris Shaw
Chris
to black
Shaw's a
belt.
friend
Chris
of
Shaw,
ours.
yep.
in Texas.
But Chris Shaw was also, I can't believe I didn't remember. You see, this is how bad I am.
Chris
with
Shaw
names.
was in your women's
was
class.
one of my regulars in the women's class.
And
I
Chris-
remember when she.
When legendary Lecca Vieira opened her women's only academy, which sounds like it was partially inspired by you.
I don't think that was inspired by me, but
That was here in Torrance.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Chris Shaw
In
was
East
there
Torrance.
regularly. Cindy
And
was there
Chris
regularly.
Shaw
Lori,
would
when
come
she'd be in
to
town.
Cindy's classes a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. Chris Shaw founded the BJJ Legends magazine.
She also had some bad knee injuries.
Mm-hmm.
All right. 2005, John Jock promotes Felicia O.
Felicia, yep.
We know Felicia O, huh?
Who was the first female Abu Dhabi winner.
Okay.
And Felicia was part of our small people's, we had a small people's Sunday roll thing. And it's interesting too, because like the way that I understand it prior to all of this, and maybe even during this a little bit, that like some people's, maybe their spouses had to approve if women were going to be allowed to train with the men.
Yep.
And I was told that like at the Gracie Academy that women weren't allowed to train with the men and that they were sent to women's self-defense
Yeah.
class. So like, so it's kind of what it was,
Yes.
why this list is like dated so much later than the other list.
Yeah, and she's got a bunch of wins over some pretty big names too.
Yeah,
So,
Felicia was an
Yeah.
avid competitor.
Sure. was out there
competitor,
kicking butt, for
very
sure.
Good competitor.
Lawrence Cousin.
Oh yeah.
I
She was
competed
promoted
against
by
her.
Flavio Bering.
You did.
Didn't end so well for me.
Yep.
Yeah, I saw her tune up Leticia Ribeiro when I was like a purple belt. She had a really good top pressure and hold downs. I think she's also judo black
Yep.
belt.
But when you rolled with her 2 years later, you guys were neck and neck.
Yeah, we had a friendly roll that wasn't like our competition match. But anyway,
She's French.
yes, we went to France.
Yeah. This is just my opinion that like I believed in Melissa more than she believed in herself. And when she finally started to believe in herself, that was kids and knee injuries took that away. But like I remember all of her matches from blue belt time and up, whether it doesn't matter whose hand is raised, Melissa always had way more in the tank, and that chick would be worn out. And I was thinking, God, if she could just learn to put that on them. And it took her a while to realize I can out-endure any of these fucking broads.
Yeah. Sure.
You could.
All right, moving
That's
on.
fine.
Number 8, Lecca promotes in November of 2005, Jocelyn Chang.
Josh.
Jocelyn's
Jocelyn,
also
yeah.
a good friend. She's the smallest black belt in the world, I believe. She
Yeah.
holds that title.
She does hold that title.
She is like probably she's well under 5 feet tall.
Yep.
Cancer survivor.
Yes, she's a cancer survivor, and she and her husband Glenn had a school called Let's Roll, which was Lecca's all-female place, but then they
Yes.
took that over,
And then-
and it was a co-ed place, and that I trained there a bunch, getting ready for competitions, and with Glenn and Jocelyn, and a bunch of other small people. Pat Becker would go over there too, and we would get ready for competitions.
Nice.
Yeah.
So fast. Okay, keep going forward. January 2006, John Lewis promotes Ghazi Parman.
Ghazi.
Ghazi
Ghazi.
Parman.
Yep.
Yeah. Ghazi's super cool.
Ghazi's
I never
super
trained
cool.
with her though, but she would come in and out of the Machado Academy.
Yeah.
MMA girl.
I don't know if she
No,
fought MMA
I think
or
she
not.
was no-gi and
Mostly
gi
no-gi,
jiu-jitsu.
but
Mostly
also gi.
no-gi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very good.
Nice.
Yeah.
Involved in a lot of competition
Now
stuff. sounds
she,
like.
even though she's American, she speaks fluent Portuguese. So
Oh, okay.
yeah,
All right.
She still gets to be on the list.
she does. Yeah.
And then number 10, we go back to the motherland, Japan. Mei 2006, Yuki Nakai promotes Megumi Fuji.
Oh, Megumi, yeah.
Megumi Fuji.
Yeah.
I remember when she was competing.
I think she was an MMA
Yeah.
fighter as well.
Yes. She's small, if I remember
Very
right.
small.
Number 11, Sue Arbogast.
Oh, Sue, I do
I don't know
vaguely
who that
remember
is.
that.
Julio Folca is her
I want
professor.
to say she was, I could be wrong, but I want to say she was a light heavyweight.
Okay. And then number
I don't know,
12,
I can't remember.
Cindy Hales.
Don't know that.
Cindy Hales is in Washington.
Yeah.
I think my friend Casey, my
Tacoma?
dear friend Casey, knows her.
Yeah, Tacoma,
yeah.
Washington.
Yeah, she has her own gym up there now, I believe.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's the women. So
The
Go
women's
women!
is. The women's
There's no
is.
honorable
The women's
mention
is.
for women?
Come on, the women's is.
What year did Cindy Hales get her black belt?
Cindy Hales, that last one. Mm-hmm. 2006.
Come on, my friends. That's the women's.
All right. That's interesting. Mm-hmm. That's like a little historical ride
Yeah.
through how it
And
was.
who really is number one out of all of it? Hanato Laranja.
Yes.
18-time
But he's
world
Brazilian,
champion.
Chris.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Shoot! Don't forget.
Don't
He's Brazilian. He is not American.
Do you guys want to hit some cues? We got some hotline hits to address.
Yeah.
Let's
hit
do
it
it.
up.
All right,
Yep.
let's get on the hotline
hit.
here.
We beat this Dirty Dozen shit to death.
Get this caller on the line here. What do you got here?
Hey guys, so I'm a blue belt, and sometimes white belts will ask me questions on how can I improve on this or improve on that, or I'm struggling with base, how do I finish the armbar, how do I defend. As a blue belt, I have a little bit of experience, and I've been doing this for about almost 5 years in December. How should I come to teach, or should I even be teaching the things the little bit that I do know, to a white belt? That's just kind of something that I've been struggling with or thinking about. Like maybe I'm teaching them wrong, and I might feel that guilt where I'm like, because I'm still learning, and we're all still learning. So, I guess that's my question. Should I be teaching as a blue belt, the little bit that I do know? And if so, how can I be sure that what I'm telling the white belts or teaching them is appropriate? Thank you.
Ooh, can I go first?
Yep.
Okay. Thanks for calling in, first of all. I think that it's really great if you teach what you know, because teaching what you know helps reinforce what you know, and it helps you break it down, and it even helps you realize if what you know maybe needs to be tweaked a little bit. So I think that teaching and sharing what you know, that you should do it all the time, even, and not get out of this worrying about if it's right or wrong or how it should be done. If you have something that you can share with that person, maybe that'll make sense for them and help it to click in a way that even the black belt instructor couldn't get through to them. I know that I have learned things as a brown and a black belt from blue belts. I know Chris has learned things. We learn things from blue belts. So you've been training 5 years. To me, that's a long time. Like you have 5 years of experience to share with other people. And so in my opinion, teach and share away, and don't worry about the results. It's all a process. And if you teach something that isn't like gonna work for that person, they'll soon find out when they roll. So you don't really have to worry about that part.
And a lot of other arts, at 5 years, you'd already be a black belt. And it is kind of one of those things like, if you can simultaneously in your mind think of yourself as a master and a clean slate student. So you're always a student first, but at the same time think, I know this, I got this. That like dual thing is what creates improvement.
Yeah,
and
I could be training in a class, learning a new technique from an instructor, and have a blue belt as my partner, and they're picking up the move quicker than I am because maybe it's something I'm not familiar with and I'm not a very quick learner. I've got a little ADD. I'm more kinesthetic than visual or auditory. So when somebody's up there talking and showing, my brain's trying to connect it and is not really able to. So a lot of times the blue belt has to help me through the move. So teach away, help away.
Yeah.
But don't over help. If
Yes.
somebody's not asking for help, I wouldn't do it.
I like your don't tell if they don't, but not necessarily to
If they
hide
don't
the
ask,
information,
don't
but it's
tell.
just more like, I don't want to, if you don't prompt me to give you information, I don't want to like,
Yeah.
I don't want to be,
Unless you are in that role. You are the coach and your role is to correct.
Yes, if
Then-
someone's
yeah.
paying me for a lesson and I'm rolling with them,
And they're
I will
doing something
coach through
stupid,
the
yeah.
roll. If you're rolling at an
Well-
open mat and you just start coaching everybody you're rolling with,
But-
that's obnoxious.
Yeah.
when they asked you
It's obnoxious. Yeah.
to teach them,
Yes,
they asked you to teach them.
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
But so like, if I'm just practicing with somebody and they don't ask, I'm not going to go out of my way. Yeah. It's not like
That's
I'm trying to
correct.
withhold information. It's just like, I'm trying to be respectful
Right.
of what that person's
Yes,
got going on.
exactly.
Maybe they're not wanting to or ready to hear it, but that's cool. That's a good answer. All right, we got we got a text message on the hotline.
Ooh.
Yeah, so I'll just read the text message. 48-year-old white belt. I recently found your podcast and your content on rolling as an older grappler has been insightful. My first intro to Chris was his comment, "It's not who's good, it's who's left," and it changed my approach. I look forward to listening each week. Thanks again, Kurt from Texas.
Thanks so much, Kurt. Thanks
Yeah,
for hitting
nice.
us up. We're glad you're listening. We actually have shirts that say it's not who's good, it's who's left.
Yeah.
And you can use the discount code podcast10 to get 10% off of those shirts.
But those are, I mean, it's cool to get the text messages. It's cool to get the
Yep.
calls. I mean,
Yep.
Yeah.
if you
thank
guys want to contribute to the pod, you can hit our hotline. The number,
Or if you want to critique and correct us, go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like you want to fact check Chris's geopolitical references.
Yeah.
If you're-
Please do.
if you're mad about me wrist locking you on the mats at your open mat too, you can call and talk some smack to me.
If you don't
Please
like
do.
my voice, why don't you tell me in person?
I firmly believe that all great knowledge comes from humility.
Yeah.
And always be willing to admit that you're wrong.
Yeah.
And always self-critique. And if somebody else critiques, don't immediately be defensive and feel insulted. Instead think, let's see if they're right.
Nice. So hit the hotline if you want to participate. You can email podcast@combatbase.com. You can hit the hotline 949-791-7763. Leave us a question or a rant.
Or text.
Or a text. What else we got going on? Do you want to do a gym shout out?
I have one.
Let's do a quick gym shout out and let's wrap this thing up. Keep it high and tight. Get out of here.
Today, we are shouting out Foundations, BJJ
love
Academy. We have four or five black belts. Let's see. There's Mike, Arun, Matt, and Drew. Right? Did I get them all?
I think so. I'm
Mike,
again.
you
when
just
you
went
ask
out
me, I'm
there.
bad at names.
Oh
I know.
my goodness. Chris
But
and
yes.
Arun are like besties. This is in Madison, Wisconsin, and they are dedicated to providing high quality jiu-jitsu instruction in an environment that is both welcoming and challenging.
And I love Madison, Wisconsin, and their academy is awesome with an impact floor.
The Academy is known for its straightforward and all-inclusive fees with no contracts, no required academy or affiliation uniforms, and no testing or promotion fees, which is what we do as well. Promotions at Foundations are based on effort and results on the mat. Recognizing that individuals train in martial arts for various reasons, the Academy supports its students' goals, whether they are competitive, self-defense oriented, or focused on skill improvement in a friendly yet competitive atmosphere. They proudly represent combat-based jiu-jitsu and offer a free trial to prospective students, encouraging them to try multiple classes before making a decision.
Street art sport on an impact mat so old people can get thrown and not hurt
Oh,
themselves.
nice. That's nice. Cool. Last little thing before we close this thing up. Our Patreon and our YouTube supers are coming through. So thank you guys.
Thank you guys so much. We want
Yeah.
to keep this thing going.
Yeah, we want to keep it going.
Keep it going.
So hit the Patreon if you feel so inclined. The YouTube supers are awesome too. It's an easy way.
YouTube Super is like a one-time donation.
One-time.
And then Patreon's like a monthly.
It's contribution. Not a donation.
Okay, contribution. Thank you for contributing
Yeah.
to our vision of
Yes.
bringing these podcasts
Yes.
to you
So
for
thanks and
indefinite future.
Thanks and keep them going. And it really makes a big difference, and we appreciate it. Pound, like, and subscribe.